Even when it's red, it's still hot. That would be funny. It'd be funny to whisper things into it. And then leave. It's all live now. It would be funny to whisper little things, and then later y'all listen back and you're like, what did he just say?
One morning, I tested someone asked where I was. Lucas has code all out.
Oh, that's funny.
Great, thanks. I heard it on over YouTube. I was like, awesome. Really appreciate it. Okay, good luck. Your forum's here, so you're fine.
How are you?
Hey, Sally. I'm Marta.
I've been looking for this cocaine and alcohol. So I just got lucky. I found a house. But also, they're not using it. It's important, man. It's part of this. It's continuous. It could be used. It's not on the tax roll. Not being used. By an owner that's taking care of 30 acres. I'll be on the south side. Let's put in charges. Just help.
got it? All right. Good afternoon. The Memphis Landmarks Commission is hereby called to order for its regularly scheduled meeting of January the 25th, 2024. My name is Cindy Grivich Tucker, and I'm the chair of the commission. Mr. Brett Ragsdale serves as the executive secretary of the commission. Mr. Ragsdale, may I get a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Doss?
Present.
Mr. Gill?
Here.
Mr. Winter?
Here.
Ms. Strong?
Here.
Chair Tucker?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The Memphis Landmarks Commission and the local historic district provisions are established to ensure preservation of structures that are of historic value to Memphis. Our function is to preserve significant resources, enhance community pride, and foster civic beauty and ensure compatibility within designated historic districts. The Commission is authorized to review projects and determine their appropriateness based on the design review guidelines. At this time, I would like to swear in the staff. You may remain seated. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. May I get a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting? Somebody?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes from last month's meeting from December 21st, 2023.
Okay, could I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Mr. Secretary, please provide us a secretary's report, if there is one this month, and then explain the procedure for this meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do not have a secretary's report. The procedure for this meeting will be as follows. I will introduce each case as listed on the agenda. Copies of the agenda are found on the right page. For each case, staff of the Division of Planning and Development will give a presentation. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present his or her case. After the applicant's presentation, the commission will hear first from those speakers in support of the application, then from those speakers in opposition to the application, and the speakers will have 3 minutes each. And then finally, the applicant will have 3 minutes to provide rebuttal. These times do not include time for questions from and answers to members of the commission. The chair may provide additional time, provided both sides are given an equal amount of additional time. All parties who wish to provide testimony to the commission will be sworn in by the chair. If a member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support of or in opposition to a particular case on today's agenda, he or she will need to fill out speaker's cards for the record. Speaker's cards are available at the front podium. Once filled out, speaker's cards can be submitted to any DPD planner at the left podium. We do not need speaker's cards from the applicants since their names are already part of the record. After all parties have been heard, the commission will close the public hearing, make a motion, and then deliberate on the case. All motions by this commission will be made in the affirmative. The bylaws governing the commission require the affirmative vote of a majority of the attending members to approve an application. The commission may also vote to hold an application for a period of 1 month. Madam Chair, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order. All applicants have been notified of this hearing, and all notice requirements have been fulfilled.
Sorry. At this point, the commission will establish a consent agenda. To establish the consent agenda, the secretary will call out each eligible case. If any member of the audience or the commission objects to a case being placed on the consent agenda, he or she should do so by a show of hands when the secretary reads the case. Once the consent agenda is established, the commission will vote on all cases placed on the consent agenda as a whole and will not hold individual public hearings on each case. Mr. Secretary, which items are eligible?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm going to note that items 1, 2, 3, and 6 are holds for this month.
Okay, thank you.
And so the consent agenda will be as follows. Item number 4, COA 23-187, 1601 Galloway Avenue in the Evergreen Historic District, with a friendly amendment to strike condition number 7 in its entirety. Item number 7, COA 2023-172, 2138 Alameda Avenue in the Valentine Evergreen Historic District, with a friendly amendment to add to condition number 3 the word painted, and I will read the condition in its entirety here. Condition number 3 will now read, The porch columns must be replaced with more age-appropriate materials, and then we add the word painted, wood, comma, brick, comma, stone, comma, and stucco, period. So it's adding the wood would be painted. Item number 8, COA 23-201, 1025 North Willette Street in the Valentine Evergreen Historic District. Item number 9, COA 23-202, 1563 Carr Avenue in the Central Gardens Historic District. And item number 11, COA 23-209, 964 North Idlewild Street in the Valentine Evergreen Historic District.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as established by the secretary?
So move.
Okay, do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, I would like to remind the commission that by voting on the consent agenda, he or she affirms that he or she has read the staff report and is in full agreement with the conditions. Mr. Secretary, may I go to roll call?
Yes, Madam Chair, and let the record show that Ms. Joyce Love has joined us here, so thank you. Mr. Winter,
Yes.
Ms. Strong,
Yes.
Ms. Love,
Yes.
Mr. Gill,
Yes.
Vice Chair Doss,
Yes.
and Chair Tucker.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I would like to remind the commission, well, I've already done that. Okay, I'm rambling here. If you are here for any of those cases that are just on the consent agenda, you have been approved. You do not have to remain at the meeting, but are welcome to stay if you want to hear the remainder of the cases. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. At this point, I would like to state that the minor COA applications as listed on the agenda have been reviewed and approved by the commission. The commission will now continue with the regular hearing of the major COA applications as listed on the agenda. Mr. Secretary, please call the first case of the regular agenda.
The first case is item number 5, COA 23-194, 1555 Benton Avenue in the Central Gardens Historic District.
Okay, is the applicant present?
They should be. One second, sorry. I haven't heard anything different from them today.
Do you want to put that to the,
Yes, so is the applicant here for, yes? For
Yes, can you come forward?
item 5?
Yes.
Brett, do we have any cards on that one? Thank you. Could you raise your right hand, please?
Yes.
Can you state your name and address?
Sarah Hunter Simonson, 1555 Benton Avenue.
Okay, thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Have you had a chance to read the staff report?
Yes, I have.
Okay, are you in agreement with the staff report and its conditions?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Since we have oppositions to this case, did you want to make any kind of statement?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. First, I wanted to apologize for not submitting a COA in advance of us building the fence. For our renovation, we did that, and it was a complete and honest mistake. The fence was not on that original application because we weren't intending to change the fence at all. We had 3 break-ins within the first 6 months of this year, from summer till now, and felt compelled to change the fencing for security. When we did that, it did not occur to us that we needed a COA because of the wide variety of fencing around us, and so I'm really sorry for that and for spending the city's time on this. And what we did is in December, we were supposed to be on the consent agenda for these 3 conditions. We had lots of parents and grandparents from Central Gardens who wrote in because they understood our safety concerns. They were in support of the fence. There was no opposition at all from other Central Gardens neighbors. because I had to have a major surgery, we had a medical hold until this month. When we had the Zoom meeting earlier this month, we were trying to figure out a compromise with Central Garden so that we could go back onto the consent agenda and wouldn't have to speak on the floor. We invited Central Gardens over to our house to talk this through, and I have, which are now 22 letters, from neighbors who understood why we wanted to have solid wood fencing, why we wanted to have taller fencing, and then I also have pictures of the fencing that we were looking at when we modeled our fence that are existing. They're right down the street from us, and I don't know if y'all want copies of these or not.
Okay, we're going to watch the, in a second, we're going to watch the presentation.
Okay.
And then you can give those to her and we can.
Look, okay. And I also want to say that we do not believe taller fences make for better neighbors at all. My husband and I chose to not leave Memphis when he had a job opportunity 2 years ago. We are passionate about staying here, being involved in the community. We just want to ensure that our children are safe. And because of the 3 break-ins we had, front, back door, garage, and basement door, we felt like we really needed solid fencing, and we want our kids to be able to play in the yard. I also would like to be able to unload groceries from the car without being visible from Willette, which is a busy crossover from Lamar to Central. Okay. And so those were our big concerns. But so we met with Central Gardens. They were not, during that meeting, I had the 19 letters we had received at that point, and the members who were there representing them were not interested in hearing any of our safety concerns at that time. And I felt like they weren't willing to listen to the other neighbors who also shared our concerns. And I printed out all of the letters for them as well. And I think that the amount of letters on both sides of this case demonstrate that people care a lot about this issue. And we were not trying to get away with having a taller fence. We didn't know the guidelines. That really wasn't it. It was purely for the safety of my young children and my family.
Okay, thank you. Can we have the staff report?
Yes.
And then we'll ask you some questions.
Okay.
I'm Alexis Longstreet with the DPD, and this presentation is on 1555 Vinton Avenue within the Central Gardens Historic District. Site improvements were simply just for the side and rear yard fence, which were also cited and received a stop work order back in October, and those pictures are included, and I will show you all those as well. So the current images that you see here are what the fence looks like or looks like previously. And so if you can look here, this is where that previous, I believe this was an iron material fence, was sitting on top of that 3-foot retaining wall. I'll say about 3 feet. And this is also another image of it from the side Willette street view as well. These are the photos that they received on the stop work order back in October of last year. And as you can tell, it was not finished where would have been like the last touches of the fence, which would have just enclosed around the side access part of the home. These are photos as of January 18th of this year, which is showing it finished, which is in violation of the stop work order that they received back in October. And this is the analysis overall of the side yard fencing, in which the guidelines do state that it shall not exceed 6 feet, and as well as overall the 3-foot setback from the sidewalk. But overall, that was kind of already in place. And that was not on the applicant as the homeowner. And so the 3 conditions that were recommended by staff was that all side yard fencing at least be removed down to 6 feet from the 8 feet that runs parallel to the rear property line, and it shall be 8 feet only in the rear. And that's another thing as well that's kind of challenging with this case, is that they don't really have a rear, they only majority have a side. So their rear fence would probably be all of maybe 3, 4, or 5 feet long, if even that. And then that they should at least obtain 1 fence permit within 1 month of the approval from you all as the commission, and then the standard, if any change or deviation from the approval shall be submitted back for review. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners have questions for staff?
I have a question for staff. The applicant mentioned a previous COA. Was that in 2023, last year, or 2022?
I believe the previous COA was 22.
2022, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And you mentioned that that snowy picture was,
That's January 18th of this year.
and that was in violation of,
The stop work order they received in October of
October.
23 because it wasn't finished.
was that that's October 2023, and then they
Yes.
proceeded with it. They proceeded with it after they got the stop order.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you can say when it was finished, between the time of October of January, but these were sent by one of our code enforcement supervisors on January, I believe that's 18th.
Okay.
The last panel of the fence is removable, so it was already built, and it was open in those pictures. It's got a removable panel on that side, so it wasn't in violation, and I was not at.
We'll talk to you in a second.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay. Okay. And there's a retaining, isn't there the retaining wall is how 2-3 feet? How tall is that?
In height, I believe it's about 3 feet at the highest point.
And then the wood, that fence itself is 8 feet?
No, is that a 6 foot or 8 foot itself?
8.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, no, correct, it is 8, because I believe it's about altogether almost 12
So
inches.
that's, yeah.
12 feet in height.
And 6 feet is what are in the guidelines for
For
Central
side yard,
Gardens?
for the front, and maximum of 8 in the rear. Front and side have to be 6.
Okay. And there were some drawings in the packet that showed
Yes.
some landscaping.
Yes, the landscaping to that was to be proposed around, on the drawings that were included from,
On the inside side.
on the inside of the fencing on that end. I'm not sure if you all still plan to implement those or.
You can just go ahead and answer.
Okay. No, that was just what my
Just say
lands-
yes or no on, were you gonna?
on the landscaping on the inside,
Uh-huh,
some of it.
okay. Questions? I'm good right now. You go ahead.
So for the height of the fence, is it the thought that we would be measuring from the sidewalk or from the top of the retaining wall?
That in the which because from the top of the retaining wall to the top of the fence itself, given that was the 8 feet, to at least deduct that down to 6.
Okay.
That's all that we're asking, is just to reduce the 2 feet from the actual fence paneling itself.
Fence panel itself. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Questions, comments for staff? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, we can come back.
Okay.
Yeah, did you want to address anything? I'll let you go a little bit out of order, but
Okay, I'm sorry.
that's okay, it was my fault.
Okay. I think the biggest thing is just that I feel like there clearly are a lot of feelings on both sides of this issue. And I think one thing that I really hope is that because of the variety of fencing that exists in Central Gardens, and I have lots of pictures of that right around my house, including other corner lots, that the safety will be considered, because clearly there's been a huge increase in crime in Memphis. And that's affecting everything from restaurants to people's daily life. My kids just had a lockdown at their school because of someone with an automatic rifle in front of it. My daughter was on the playground at the time. Like, it is very stressful as a parent to live in the city of Memphis right now, especially as a young woman. And I want to be able to feel as safe as possible at home. And that's our biggest concern. And like she mentioned, the side yard is our only yard. We were planning to put up a swing set in the spring. We would like our kids to be able to be outside as much as possible. And that's why we moved into this neighborhood. We're not trying to put up barriers in the neighborhood. We wanted to be able to walk to school. We wanted to get to know our neighbors. There are letters in here from other moms with young children on our street who we've gotten to know. They feel safer with their kids coming over because we have a solid fence. And that's our priority, is just the safety of our children and family. And so I hope that that will be taken into consideration in all of the letters that people sent on our behalf who feel the same way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The commissioners have questions for the applicant. Go ahead.
So at the beginning, you said that you were in agreement with the staff report and the conditions that were proposed? Is that correct? Okay, so you're in agreement that removing the top 2 feet of the wood fence is agreeable to you?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to clarify that question.
Anyone else?
It was briefly asked earlier about the renderings that are in the staff report that show landscaping that are inside of the fence. You said you all might implement some of that. You may not be able to see it, but in the application you all submitted to us where we have the landscaping plan and we have renderings of sort of the landscaping.
Yes.
Okay. It's showing landscaping like evergreens inside of the fence. And I was wondering if you all ever considered having the plantings or landscaping outside of the fence and the fence inside.
So that was one option that we had discussed. There's a strip of grass, like where the leaves are in that picture, and we had discussed doing some landscaping on the out. It couldn't be that big, it would get in the way of the street. We're not planning to do any planting along the fence right now. This is like an eventual plan because of the expense.
But if you did if the consideration of cutting it off, moving it back, and putting some landscaping on the outside to buffer the look of this fence, because it's pretty drastic what people are walking by and looking at. Would you consider doing that? Because it also gives you...
The expense of moving the fence is so great. We would prefer to keep the fence where it was. That's where the existing fence was. There also are lots of fences like this right around us that I have pictures of that are solid wood. So I feel like it's in keeping with the neighborhood.
But I'm not sure when those were built. This is in our purview now.
Yeah, and I would argue that the difference here is that the existing fence was a much shorter fence and it was also transparent. The fact that you've placed a much taller fence and an opaque fence in the same spot is what's causing the heartburn for everybody. And I think what the other commissioners have mentioned is if you were to entertain moving the fence back off of the retaining wall and put basically a planting strip between the retaining wall and the fence, it would soften even though you could still have an opaque fence, it would soften that look to the rest of the neighbors. And I think it'd be a lot more palatable, certainly, I would guess, to us and certainly probably to your neighbors as well.
So we had our landscaper come up with ideas to make that outside of the fence as it is greener that we were trying to share with the Central Gardens Association. And I have pictures of those. Those are not in the packet that you see, but it's planting with like trellises with specific types of varied plantings that could go along the fence to soften it without having to incur the cost of moving it and adding a very expensive amount of landscaping to the outside.
Okay.
And why did you did not think that a fence, because you're in a historic district, you knew you were in a historic district because you've come before us and applied before, but you went forward with the fencing without coming before us.
Yes, I'm sorry, we just didn't know. At that point, we had 3 break-ins in such quick succession that we were just trying to get a fence up so that we did, and we haven't, knock on wood, we haven't had a break-in or any security issues since the fence was installed.
And who's the contractor? Who's the fence person?
Solo Landscape.
Okay. I mean, and who's the fence, the people that did the fence?
Solo Landscape.
They did all of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
This is a question for staff. So when they built the fence, the contractor didn't pull a permit for the fence, correct?
No.
Okay.
And I wasn't aware of that until we got the stop work order. And when I talked to him, I'm thinking it was because we'd had so many break-ins. I'd asked him to get us on the schedule. I knew they'd had a cancellation. And so he came out. We weren't expecting him to come out that week. And so I'm wondering if that's why. But I've discussed that with my landscaper because we were unaware.
Okay, at what point did you discuss the fence with Central Gardens? Because they have, they have representative for landmarks. Was it before you put the fence up?
No, it was after because we didn't know that we needed to discuss it with them. We just didn't know that. And again, I can show you the pictures. There's so many varieties of fencing right around us. We had no idea that it also needed to go through COA approval. And that's our fault, and I'm really sorry about that. It was just ignorance.
The Central Gardens is a pretty strict codes for everything.
Yes, and so I'm really sorry about that.
Anybody else? Okay. So we have some people that want to speak. Y'all are finished with questions for the applicant? Okay. So in support, Jeff Dillard.
Hi.
Hey, would you state your name and address?
Jeff Dillard. I live at 1845 Cowden Avenue in Central Gardens.
Okay, raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. I got involved in this because Sarah Hunter is a former client of mine. I did the addition to this house that you guys were discussing for the earlier COA. She had called me in October after she got the stop work order in a bit of a panic, saying, what do I do? Can you help me? Because she didn't understand that they had violated everything. They had violated this. And so I helped her kind of walk her through the application, which is my name is on it, and agreed to help her work with Central Gardens and work with you guys to find a solution because she was worried about the expense of moving the fence. Apparently there is some landscaping behind it and stuff now that has to be moved and all that kind of stuff. I said, fine. I've done this in the past, volunteered my time either directly for Central Gardens Association or for individuals working with them, and we have been able to find, architectural solutions to problems like this. Things that help get the homeowner what they want, but also allow the neighborhood to, find a design solution that's acceptable to the neighborhood. To that end, I attended the design review meeting that we had. It was apparent during that there was room for some compromise. I asked that specifically. They said yes. I suggested to the homeowner that we go to Central Gardens and say, hey, here's some ideas for compromise. What do you guys think? Work with them to try to come up with something. And we did that. We had a meeting with Central Gardens with their landmarks committee, and we presented to them 3 ideas just as a starting point. We gave them one idea that we knew the homeowner didn't want to do. We gave them one that we probably knew they wouldn't want to do, and kind of one in between. And just said, look, this is the starting point for conversation. Help us. Unfortunately, our effort was rebuffed. Central Gardens folded their arms and said it was all or nothing, and didn't give us a chance to even discuss further compromise.
You have 1 minute.
For further ideas that we had. And I think that's a missed opportunity because I used to be on the board. I used to be in their position. We always took cases like this as opportunities for us to find unique designs and actually get something cool designed instead of just something that meets the regulations. And never before have I ever met this level of intransigence on Central Gardens. I think it's upsetting. I think that if Central Gardens isn't willing to meaningfully engage with their homeowners on something like this, when they come to them hat in hand and say, look, help us, quite frankly, I think they forfeit any opportunity to even have a say. I guess that's it. Other than to say that I think that Landmark staff picked up the ball on this. They have a good solution. Their recommendation is fine. I support it as a homeowner. I support it as a friend of the clients, and I think that they do as well. Thank you.
Okay, wait a second. Sir, did y'all want to ask? Okay.
If I could add one thing, though, if I can.
He wants to ask you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I wanted to know what your compromise that you presented to Central Gardens was.
So we gave them 3. We gave them one that was as you suggested, moving the fence, but keeping it 8 feet, but with landscaping in front to hide it. We gave them one that was to leave it in place, but cut it down to 6 feet, which is what staff is recommending. And we gave them one to leave it in place, cut it down, but then put some trellis work on top and try to do something architectural to the fence itself to make it more acceptable and more interesting. I think somewhere in there was probably some cool solution, or somewhere in the discussion, maybe we would have come up with something else. Anyway, what I wanted to add, though, was that after our meeting, one of the board members of Central Garden circulated an email which misrepresented our case as that they did not want to compromise.
Sir.
They did.
I'm sorry.
I understand.
I don't know what's in there. I can't see it. I can't. I'm not going to look at all of it. Yeah. Okay. I have another one. Is this the same Sarah Hunter Simonson? This says, is that you?
Yes, that's.
Okay. Okay. So now we have an opposition. Aaron Ramage, please come up. Could you state your name and address?
Aaron Ramage, 1656 Carr Avenue.
Okay, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm here to kind of oppose this fence. It violates a lot of our design guidelines in the neighborhood. It's disruptive to our streetscapes. And just earlier, there was a mentioning that the wall, retaining wall it sits on is 3'6" or something of that nature. Is that at the lowest point? As the stretch goes to the south, it gets almost to be 6 feet. It's like 5'8" or something, I think. So when you have that plus an 8-foot wall, that is a very strong barrier that's like 12'6" or something in comparison to our mandate of 6 feet for the neighborhood. That really disturbs the streetscape and puts up a really walled environment that people walk next to. They'll walk their dogs. You walk next to this wall, it's looming over you. Everyone else manages security issues in Central Gardens with a 6-foot fence. I'm not sure why we should make any exception on this, because as soon as we make one exception, that's the new rule. We find that our guidelines keep getting broken over and over. A lot of people either don't know that they exist, or they just proceed and do something and hope their outcome doesn't get stopped. And we see that over and over in our neighborhood, and that is starting kind of a bad condition, and it's rampant in our neighborhood. If you look at that fence and walk against that versus this green on here, this existing thing was very, very welcoming. The other thing is that our guidelines is a 6-foot barrier between the street and the yard, visual barrier. That's supposed to count as the wall and the fence, not just the fence. So when you add those two together at that height, it's just way out of character in the neighborhood. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, also, where it starts, on a side yard setback in our neighborhood, it says that the fence is supposed to start at the back of the house. This grandfathered in fence location was forward, but it was grandfathered in. It was done before the guidelines. Putting a fence back on here, going back with something different than what was there without getting prior approval, basically should void the grandfather clause. That fence should actually push back to the back of the house, behind that big tree, and open up a little bit more to the street than what you see here.
Okay, thank you. Y'all have some questions for the speaker?
I just have one question. Are you in opposition to the conditions or the current state, or both?
If my understanding is the staff report is recommending just cutting it down to 6 in its location.
Yes.
I'm opposed to that.
Okay.
Everyone else has to put stuff back, fences away from the street. And now we gave them compromises that we submitted to the city that we, as a neighborhood, landmarks representatives of our neighborhood review committee, that our options were that it could stay where it is. If it's transparent, it needs to be 6 feet, kind of like the wrought iron fence that was there, but they can do the taller one, because that one was like 3.5 or 4 feet that was existing. The other was setting it back 3 feet and doing a 6-foot wooden fence with landscaping in front of it to soften the experience. But by the time you have this parched wall and then you have this raw wood on top of it, it's very unattractive. If you look, there's a lot of wrought iron brick fences along that street. There's some that have stone on them. The neighbors across the street have stone. The neighbors across the street on the other side actually have it set back where it's supposed to be. It's brick and iron. It's very inviting. It's not even 6 feet tall. And their kids play in the yard.
Go ahead.
So if I understood you correctly, you said one of the compromises that the neighborhood submitted was to move the wall back some and put landscaping in front.
Correct.
I believe the gentleman that spoke before you said the same thing. So is there a compromise there?
That is acceptable. But what I understand is about to be, or suggested to be approved, is the fence being removed down to 6 where it is.
Sure, understood.
And that we oppose. I mean, if they can move it back, the setback that everyone else lives with. I also live on a corner lot, and I did something very similar in my yard, but I was respectful to my neighbors in the guidelines, and I set mine back 4 feet just because I thought 3 foot was pushing it and just too much.
Understood. Thank you.
Mine's got iron on it, open. It's got stucco as well. It's a little bit more inviting, not as perhaps brutal as this seems to be.
Thank you. Does anybody else?
I'll ask you, I meant to ask the applicant earlier. Does the neighborhood still have the security service or patrolled security service?
There is Phelps Security that drives through our neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, ma'am, just wait, please. We'll call you back up in a second. Go ahead. Did you want to? No. Brown?
That was it, thank you.
Anyone else? Did she have? Did you have anything you wanted to? Okay, thank you. Okay, the applicant has 3 minutes for rebuttal. You can come back up.
Thank you. I was just going to say, we do have Phelps security. All of our break-ins happened with having Phelps. And our neighbors who we share a driveway with, we also had our transparent gate broken off of the stone of the house with one of those break-ins when their cars were broken into. And they've had their cars broken into twice in the last 4 months. And so they also wrote a letter saying that they really supported having the solid fencing where it is because it's also making their yard safer, and so did the people directly across the street from us. A lot of those letters are from people right around us. Then there are other letters from spread out in the neighborhood. And I just want to emphasize, we really don't want to incur the cost of moving the fence. We thought that we could have it where it was before, and the reason we would like to keep the solid fencing is for safety and a lack of visibility so that people can't see into the yard and can't see the kids playing. When originally we were supposed to be on the agenda in December, Central Gardens had no letters in opposition. We were supposed to be on the consent agenda. There was no opposition to it at all. Once I invited them to our house to talk about it in person, that's when it seemed like the opportunity to compromise went away. And instead of looking at the letters that we had gathered and discussing our security concerns with us, there was an email sent out that misconstrued how willing I was and my husband and I were to compromise, and they solicited opposing letters. And that happened after we had already gathered the letters of support. And so I feel like reaching out for a compromise, it's not only that they weren't willing to listen to us, and I think this is a compromise that has happened before, just lowering a fence and keeping it where the pre-existing fence was, and there are pictures in there of very similar fences a few houses down from us on Millette. I think that it is a larger community issue, and I don't think this needs to happen with our house specifically, but I do think there's an obligation to take into account the safety concerns of the neighborhood. Many of the neighbors who wrote letters have had safety issues. The house he mentioned across the street from ours with a wrought iron fence and a playground, I talked to that mom. She's not comfortable with her daughter playing in that yard. And she's one of the 5 children I mentioned who live on this stretch of Vinton. And she doesn't like the fact that people can see her daughter in the yard or talk to her daughter when she's in the yard. They're never out there. And I think that the city has an obligation to support families, especially young families, choosing to stay in the city, keep our tax dollars in the city, support the city, and allow people to have the option to feel safer at home as they're working to make the city safer, which is what both of my husband and I try to do. We volunteer a lot. We're very involved in the neighborhood. And we moved here to be walkable, to walk to school. That's how we met most of the neighbors who wrote letters for us. And so I just hope you'll take that into consideration. And thank you again for your time. I'm sorry again to spend the city resources on this because of our mistake.
Okay, thank you. Did y'all have any more questions for her? Okay. At this time, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this case, and the commissioners will further discuss just with each other, then you'll be able to hear it. May I have a motion?
Madam Chair, for the purposes of discussion, motion that we approve COA 2023-194, 1555 Vinton Avenue, Central Gardens Historic District.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who wants to start? Go ahead.
Oh, we need a second.
Oh.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
So I'll say this. I have seen some pretty tall fences over there, to be honest. Right along Willette, that street, there's a couple of places, and I wasn't really looking at it that critically, in terms of gauging dimensions or anything. But they seem pretty tall. Like there's a retaining wall, and then there's a fence. I'm pretty sure the lady with the playground I've seen, but they're pretty tall, like comparable.
When they were put in?
I don't. I mean, they've always been there though, like for years, several years. Mm-hmm. My daughter went to school in the neighborhood as well, close by. So we were over there a lot. So I don't know.
I still just say that this is another forgiveness,
Sure.
asking for forgiveness type thing. And a person of people who knew that the guidelines existed, but didn't delve deep enough to see.
Contractors.
Contractors and the owners too, knew that these things existed. It's not total ignorance type plea. I think there's some possible solutions. I think my solution is cutting it down and moving it back and buffering it so that it is kinder to the neighborhood. And that's what I would probably be more in favor of.
So you think minus 2 feet?
Yeah.
Then
So 2
set
or
it
3.
back. What was the setback? 3 more feet?
Set it back.
4. Wait.
I don't know how many
I
feet.
forgot how many feet the setback was, but push it back maybe 3 feet. I don't remember.
It's 3 feet from the sidewalk.
3. Yeah. And then landscaping.
I was gonna say, we're here to protect the Central Gardens guidelines. I think you just give them an option. Either lower it 2 feet and move it back 3, or follow the other guidelines about transparency and be at the total height, including the wall.
Yeah, I think that there are 3 things that are wrong here. It's the transparency, it's the height, and it's the location right on top of the sidewalk. And for those, I agree with Commissioner Gill there, and with you, Chairman Tucker, that it is obtrusive, and it is it is a retroactive case. So I agree with those things. I think some of those things have to be addressed. I actually don't agree with the staff that just lowering it 2 feet is enough. And I also, I appreciate the applicant's comments about the need for the opaqueness and the height. I can sympathize with those things, but I also agree that the guidelines are clear, and we're here to adjudicate based on those things. So I think we're somewhat of in a stuck position in that case.
Well, the truth is that if they had have come before us, these would be the comments we would have provided to you all, that no, you do not want to put it right there with that kind of massing. I did have a version of a solution if it was at that place, because I do feel that, okay, in the past, there was about a 3.5 foot fence there. That height was there, maybe 3.5, 4 feet. And if that was the limit of where the solidness was, and then you added perhaps that additional 2 feet of that trellis-like transparency, perhaps that could help with that softening if it was right against that front as it was. I also, with the fact of it being opaque, I am not particularly fond of it being directly on top of the retaining wall. I mean, I would have probably put it right behind the retaining wall at least, so you saw this idea of a transition. If you're trying to gather or even just have as much of that yard available as possible. I think those would have been viable solutions for getting as much yard space as well as still creating a sort of softening of that front, because right now just having that solid base, and most of the pictures, I agree, most of the pictures that were even provided, there's always some element of softening happening with it, regardless of how it was treated. The height, understandable. Most of those are probably the reason why we have these guidelines in the first place.
Right.
And that is part of the thing where we can't really just say, hey, well, we've had it before, so we can continue doing it, because most of these happened and now we have these guidelines and we have to enforce it. So how can we make this a softer buffer? And unfortunately, it's kind of that contractor risk thing. You decided to proceed forward, didn't get everything tied up. So now how do we fix it? And it sucks, honestly, that there is going to be any added expense to it. But I do think one of these examples probably would be almost a softer side of what could be at that
Yeah, this bottom one corner,
the bottom
Willett
corner.
and Vinton.
If this example that you gave, because it does feel like that could perhaps break up that mass wall that you would be walking against. And I don't know if that could be in addition to it, not just saying taking it down 6 feet, but also perhaps creating a, from 4 feet up or something, a more transparent covering of that wood, and it still be the wood. So there are more options that could happen other than just, ugh.
Yeah, I think,
I'm in agreement. I'm in alignment with that. I do like that this one with the trellis piece at the top. I think that you're right, that does soften it, and it's another option for compromise. Take it down and then add the trellis piece. Not necessarily the wood columns, because that's just a whole.
Yeah, that we're not ignoring like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the trellis piece at the top may soften it some, but you guys are right about it being imposing and moving it
good word.
back. It is imposing.
Yes.
And moving it back some or adding the greenery and landscaping. But I do like the trellis part.
So I do agree. I do agree that the fencing, or there should be some barrier or buffer with landscaping and the fence and the retaining wall. And I guess I go back to the person who spoke, because he mentioned how this is not in kind. You know, it started out with wrought or ironclad, iron slats. So it's replaced now with wood. It's not in kind. And if it's not in kind, we're treating this as if it's a replacement in kind. And I question that. So, and I think that's more of why I'm leaning towards the setback, because the guidelines state a 3-foot setback. And I'm leaning towards having the landscaper buffer, moving the fence back, because it's more consistent and harmonious. And as was written in, we had a former commissioner write in, we had the former person who worked on the design guidelines with Landmarks Commission staff, because they specifically wrote the language or helped write the language for fencing, because fences are such a big deal in Central Gardens, and here we are up here discussing this case. And we've had, obviously they've had iterations over the years. The last time it was updated was 2019, which was not too far away, and they specifically addressed fencing because times had changed and needed an update. And so as we think about, again, there's a 3-foot setback. These were last updated in 2019, and what you traditionally see are the buffer, and so it's not so imposing. And we are here, as Commissioner Gill stated, to uphold the design guidelines. I would just like for fellow commissioners to take that into account. Thank you.
Okay. Enough discussion, or did you want to go any further?
Would someone like to make a motion about the landscape buffer?
I will tell you, my most unfavorite part of this fence is probably where it curves around that tree.
Yeah.
I feel like that was an increment of something that was added, especially with this fence. I feel like that is the part that really triggers. And I really wish there was a way that it could have come and.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to know, the applicant has spoken with us and said that, hearing the comments, that if the commission, because it sounds like there's going to be some changes in design, and obviously we know that that's sometimes difficult at this point, they asked if the commission would be open to holding the case, allowing them to go back and look at some options that they could come back with.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Great idea.
Absolutely. I even have a sketch if they'd like.
You would? Okay, so where do we go?
Motion to hold this case for 1 month.
Seconded.
Without objection?
Without objection.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Jay, would you like to call the next case?
Yes, ma'am. The next case is item number 10, COA 23-206, 1657 York Avenue in the Central Gardens Historic District.
Okay, is the applicant present? Come on up. Hey, could you state your name and address, please?
Selden Montgomery, 2639 Central Avenue.
Okay, would you raise your right hand? Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay, thank you. Have you been able to read the staff report?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you in agreement with the staff report and its conditions?
Every bit of it, yes, ma'am.
Okay. We do have some opposition to this case, so could we show the staff report?
All right, good afternoon. I'm Margot Payne with DPD, presenting this case on behalf of my colleague, Aisha Penzis. This property is a vacant lot on the south side of York Avenue between Roland and Roselle. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 2-story single-family home with site improvements such as a new driveway, a walkway, and side and rear yard fences. Here are the proposed elevations that were recently updated since the original application was filed. I will say they did submit these very recently, and I believe the new plans meet a lot of the conditions. There are extensive conditions on this case, so I'll come back to these plans in a second, but here are the proposed side elevations, the floor plans. And in general, the proposed plans meet a lot of the neighborhood design guidelines. The developers worked with Central Gardens and taken a lot of their feedback into consideration. One of the main issues is with the lack of a true dormer, which is addressed by staff conditions, as well as the proposed band board that's aligned with the second floor windowsills, which is higher than what's seen historically. So I can come back to these if there are specific questions, but
Staff is recommending approval with 25 conditions. A lot of these conditions are straight from the UDC, which would be reviewed in planning and zoning anyway, but we're putting them here just so everyone's on the same page. So quickly, that's number one, that at least one type A or type C tree would be added in the front yard. All sidewalks along the front edge of the property shall be inspected for ADA compliance. The front yard setback shall be in line with the existing structures on the block. The side yard setback shall be minimum 3.5 feet. Rear yard setback shall be minimum 15 feet. All side yard and rear yard fences and gates shall be of appropriate materials, such as pressure-treated wood or wrought iron. And the fences and gates shall be maximum 6 feet in height in the side yard and 8 feet in the rear. Sections of the side yard fence that run perpendicular towards the structure shall be set back in accordance with the design guidelines. I won't read all through those. Oops. The foundation walls of the structure shall be minimum 24 inches in height and shall be of appropriate materials such as parged concrete or brick. The roof of the structure shall have maximum 8/12 pitch or minimum 18-inch overhangs. The gable on the front facade shall be removed and replaced by a true dormer with at least one window opening to complement the proposed windows of the structure in terms of shape and style. The front porch of the structure shall be minimum 8 feet in depth, shall be full width to match the width of the structure. The front porch roof shall be of appropriate style, such as shed, hip, or flat. The gable portion of the porch roof shall be removed. The porch supports shall be single or double columns of appropriate materials such as wood, fiberglass, or fiber cement with a minimum 18-inch width. And all wood elements shall be painted. Unfinished timber columns shall not be used. All brick elements shall remain unpainted, and all brick shall be of appropriate size. Jumbo or oversized brick shall not be used. The front door of the structure shall be centered between the porch supports. The front door of the structure shall be of appropriate style with side lights. The applicant shall have the option to add a transom and would submit door details for staff review. All windows shall be of appropriate materials such as high-quality vinyl, wood, or composite, and shall be consistent with 1/1 or 4/1 grid pattern with true divided lights. The proposed oval window in the front facade shall be removed. All windows and doors shall have minimum 4-inch trim of appropriate materials such as wood or fiber cement. Exterior siding of all facades shall be of appropriate materials, such as horizontal wood or fiber cement, with a maximum 6-inch reveal, minimum 4-inch corner boards. And the reveal of the siding shall be consistent for both upper and lower levels of the structure. The band board shall be relocated to the level where the upper level floor plate is. The driveway and walkway shall be of appropriate materials, such as concrete, stone pavers, or brick. The driveway and turnaround area shall be set back minimum 1 foot from the side property line, and the applicant shall provide updated site plan elevations and floor plans reflecting all of this prior to the issuance of the COA. And then any change or deviation shall come back before this board. So I will go, I know that was a lot, go back to the plans. I believe many of these conditions have been addressed. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Yeah. Anybody have any questions for staff? I know.
I know.
A lot of work, Marco.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know how helpful that was.
Okay, let's see.
Appreciate
So is
it.
there anything that we need to address? I mean, it's a lot of stuff there.
There are a number of things that have been addressed, but still some that haven't. The applicant has agreed to all these conditions. So things like this band board, I'm just looking quickly, the roof pitch, the applicant will change and submit new plans to us that meet all those. So from a staff perspective, we're happy with this plan to present it to you for consideration. But I believe there's neighborhood opposition or at least questions.
There are.
So that
I'm
might
not sure
help
if they're aware
narrow
of what's
down
been done.
the issues.
Great.
Ask a clarifying question.
Yeah.
For the staff. So what's presented on the screen is a little different than what we see in the packet. So I was following along, checking to see what had been addressed. So I'm just trying to catch up and make sure I understand. There's a couple things that are pretty significant that are still in the conditions that still don't appear to be addressed here, such as the full width of the porch, the true dormer in the center. Are those things still the applicant is agreeing to change?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. Sir, did you want to, you have time for a statement before we see about the opposition?
Yeah, again, as Margot said, we agreed all the proposed items on the staff report. Again, as she said, some of that's been updated on the newest plans that we've made, and we'll also continue to update those further to accommodate everything else discussed. And that's about all I got.
Okay.
We appreciate your support of staff.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, did y'all have any questions for the applicant? Okay. At this time, I'm going to call the opposition, and you can sit down for a second. Perry Short. Could you state your name and address?
Yes, ma'am. My name's Perry Short. I live at 1651 York Avenue.
Okay, could you raise your right hand?
Ma'am.
Raise your right hand.
Sure.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
I submitted a statement in writing. I guess at this point, I kind of had a couple of questions. The first one being that the proposal, I'm assuming it remains the removal of 5 trees. Is that correct, or do I?
Is it what now? You say that again?
The proposal is the removal of 5 trees?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the lot. Selden, do you want to come back and speak to the tree? Or sorry, y'all.
It's okay, because I can't answer what she's talking about.
Okay. There are five trees on the lot, and with the new construction.
Are you asking if they're going to be that? What is that your?
They intend to remove them to build this property.
Okay, is that what you want to talk about, or some other things as well?
Well, that, and then also I had a question concerning the, as far as the placement of a fence between these properties.
Placement
on my side.
Placement of what?
A fence.
Okay.
I apologize, I've got kind of dry mouth. The proposal shows that there's a 43, hold on just a second, I'm so sorry. Give me just a minute here. I'm sorry, okay, 35 feet from the sidewalk to the porch, and then the porch proposal would be 8 feet. So 35 and 8 is 43 feet. So 43 feet from the edge of the sidewalk would be the front wall of the proposed home. I know they're stating that they're in alignment with the houses that are already existing. Mine is 47.8 feet.
Do you think some of these things are going to be addressed by the conditions that he's said he's going to uphold now?
Ma'am.
You're talking about the setback?
Yes, ma'am, on the front.
Okay. Some of these things might be taken care of already by him agreeing to all those 25 conditions that are already up there.
Okay, well, my question was that if this house would be sitting probably about 4.5 feet closer to the street than mine would, and if the fence has to be 6 feet back, does that pertain to both properties, of the front wall of both properties?
The fence would pertain to this property. Are you worried that their fence will sit too far in front of your property? Are you right next door?
Right, yes.
Okay.
That it'll sit right in front of or to the side of my portico share, which will block access to.
Their home should be in line with your home. 35 feet is on here as we've conditioned that under the Unified Development Code as well as landmarks, that the home should be in line. I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but too many things. But the first condition,
Condition number 3, and it's also on the site plan. It does have a 35-foot dimension, but it also notes that the house would be in alignment with the adjacent houses per
it says the front yard setback, not including the front porch, shall be in line with the existing structures on the block per UDC 392E. So that's something that'll kind of come within the permitting process. Okay. So you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, and then I apologize because I'm not familiar with this, but can somebody please explain to me what the difference between a type A and a type C tree, what that basically means?
It has to do with power lines being above or not. It's just like, right, it's like the lifetime growth of a tree and what's required. They want you to plant a tree in your front yard, and they want it to be a substantial tree, but not all lots can handle a tree that grows straight up into a power line.
Okay. The other thing is that this will be basically 10 feet of space between my property and this property, with a fence basically 5 feet in between, I'm guessing. I mean, the way I've kind of looked at this design. And it's basically going to feel like it's sitting on top of me. I would just like to state that I, am opposed to that. Purchased this home many years ago because that yard was the way that it was. The former owners did not want that sold separately, but it has been.
Are these things that, what she's talking about, are these things that if there's setbacks and there's side setbacks too, and
setback is 5 feet.
Yeah,
so
there's rules that apply.
Actually, the side setback is 3.5 feet, so they're further back than what they're allowed. They're further back than what they're allowed to be. They can be closer to you.
Okay, and then the fact that 2 of these 4 trees, the 4 large ones, there's a smaller one that is the 5th one, but 2 of these 4 trees are directly on the property line.
Are trees underneath our purview?
Or environment, is that environmental?
I believe a lot of the guidelines encourage keeping the trees, but it's not a legal, not a binding requirement of the guidelines.
Right, and the condition number 1 is part of the UDC, which is having 1 type A or C tree for new construction. It's part of the UDC, but we typically add it here just to reinforce that. But existing trees, while we can encourage that, it's really not something that we can legally require. So.
I'm not sure exactly what that means.
Did you have anything? What we might let you do so we can move to the next person on this is let you, after this, talk to staff, and if you have those types of questions. Okay. Because I think that he's addressed in these 25 conditions and more that he's willing to work with everybody to build this.
Well, I apologize. I just saw
No,
this
you're
when I
fine.
came
And
in,
this
so.
we're punting too because we haven't seen all this yet.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
So I wanted to thank the applicant, Ms. Short, for your comments that you wrote in regarding this. You mentioned earlier about the trees. You did state, yes, that there were 4 large trees, and I think you said they were about 100 years old or something, and so that's why you were asking about the trees, will they be saved, because they are very mature, and you're looking at like 4 very large trees that are 100+ years old. 5 stories in height, and a flowering dogwood tree. You did mention in the letter, so, and I did see that earlier, so thank you. And it's unfortunate in a way for those of us who appreciate what a mature tree or what a tree does to the landscaping or the streetscape. But we see a lot nowadays where they come in, they do new construction, and they totally cut down all the trees. And so that's quite unfortunate that there aren't more protections for and encouraging building around sometimes the trees that are on the property to sort of incorporate that into the design because that really does add to, and it helps to protect the canopy. And it takes decades for trees to grow and get to these heights. And thinking of all that they survived from weather elements over 100+ years, and then to see them totally cut down, and you start out with this new build on the property and nothing around it, but everything else on the streetscape has these mature trees. Is quite, it's unfortunate to see sometimes, as much as we do.
I agree.
And to not belabor it, but sometimes too, you need an arborist to go in and check these trees, because after a certain point, they're start to die and become a hazard. So that's I mean, and you know, we've all gone through that ourselves and personally and whatever. So that we all love them, because I worked on the tree board too to get us established as a Tree City USA. But you still have to know that those trees are solid and good, even though from the outside they might look like they are too. It's just an aside for that. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So, and if
thank
you
you,
have
I
any other
appreciate it.
questions?
Not right now, but I'll talk with her, I guess,
Okay.
if something pops in my mind. Thank you all.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for your interest.
Okay. Gabriel Short? Okay. Okay, name and address?
My name is Gabriel Short. Address is 1651 York.
Okay, raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay. You have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Okay, thank you. So I am the son of the previous speaker. We both share residence at 1651, which is the property immediately to the left of the proposed structure's location. I think a couple of additional points we wanted to make was that we are concerned that this construction could be very disruptive and invasive to both of our properties, but entirely to the total block. The amount of construction that is anticipated, we have a lot of concerns regarding noise, potential damages. My mother actually works from home, so she's home almost all the time. She is a nurse for Methodist. I think she's got some concerns that could impact her ability to effectively do her work. And then additionally, regarding the trees, thank you for your point about this potentially being something that could help with the safety concerns of trees that age. But I think one reason we are concerned about them as well is that they do offer a bit of visible disruption from our property to the other surrounding properties. It offers a little bit more sense of privacy, and that was, as my mom said, kind of the appeal about why we bought that house so long ago, was that we wanted to have that sense of, privacy and not necessarily feel like we have someone else directly on us. The proposed structure seems like it's not going to yield that much space between our house and the new structure when it is completed. Whereas right now, the lot as it has been very nice, pleasant space providing green space that we've all appreciated. And I guess in closing, I just wanted to say that I am sorry for the amount of strife this situation has kind of caused both us, but also the new owner of the parcel. Unfortunately, it seems like it would have been a more sound conclusion to sell the entire property from the previous owner to a single entity instead of divvying it up. But unfortunately, this is where we're at. So I guess that's it.
Okay, thank you. Do y'all have any questions?
Just a comment. I think the fence may resolve the privacy issue. The fence is, 6 feet. That should resolve the privacy issue. What happens? I mean, they're building anyway, but what's the preference? Is not to build? Is just to have the green space?
Unfortunately, I think that's my personal ideal, but even in a situation with the structure still going to happen, I guess good compromises could be to have possibly narrow the proposal to where the house itself, the structure is not to the full dimension that it's currently residing at, just to offer a little bit more physical distance between the existing properties and when the structure will actually be built, just to offer a little bit more space around the fencing and everything from one actual house to another. Anything else?
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Is last name Daniel Luigia? Okay, could you state your first name and last name and address?
Luja Daniel, 1663 York.
Okay, could you raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm Luja Daniel. This vacant lot is right next to my house. The reason I'm here is I'm here to oppose the current design for this house. I know the city has added 25 conditions, but my primary concern is the proposed house is a giant 2-story house, over 3,400 square feet. The entire street is occupied by historic houses, and none of our houses is that big. So mine is 2,700 square feet. My neighbor who just spoke, her house is 2,400 square feet. And this lot is significantly smaller than all of us, everybody. You know, I don't have the city map right in front of me, but I'm sure the city can get those. But so according to the current design, in order to build a house over 3,400 square feet, that lot currently have 4 mature trees, like one on my side, you know, the lot next to my house, there are 3 together with that side. So all these trees are, you know, close to 100 years old or, you know, pretty significant. So I'm asking the designer to build a little bit smaller house, which will preserve all the trees, because I live in Central Garden. Those trees provide not only beauty, but they provide shades for summertime, and of course they are like shelter for birds and all the other creatures. I don't know you guys actually live in the Midtown or not, but no matter where you live, you know, if you hear someone, you know, a developer just bought a 50 by 100 feet lot, going to cut down 4 trees to build this lot, you know, you're going to be upset because the trees, just like you and me, we have lives for the trees to survive that long. So I see that 25 conditions, but I don't see anything about preserving the existing trees on that lot. That will actually give us value, you know, for the neighbors mostly and for the new owners. But the point is, I bought this house a year ago. When I did the title search, the previous owner owned this house through generations that never really turned on the market. So the current owner, the previous owner only like inherited the house. So this lot was preserved together with a house for 100 years, over 100 years. My house was built in 1912. So according to the map, so because this house and lot was originally for over 100 years, belonged to the same family, same owner, my carport is right next to, right on the property line. So they did a research, they put a marker there, but my carport is right there. So what I can see, the current design, they, the city asked them to give the 3.5 feet easement, but that's just too narrow for for me or the new owner. I believe the lot is sold to a developer, so someone is going to build a house but not live there, and they're going to sell it. So, the primary purpose of the builder is going to build as much big house as possible, so they can get as much profit as possible for that house. But as existing homeowner and whoever is going to buy that house, it's going to be more to our benefit to have a proper space between my carport and their fence and their driveway and their house.
Okay.
I'm just thinking.
You'll have to wrap it up.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's just my two concerns. One is, of course, the trees, whether or not the current design will support the existing tree to survive. And the second concern is, of course, the new design between my house, of course, my neighbor's house as well.
Okay.
And,
All right. Thank you. Do y'all have any questions for the speaker? Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Adam Pati. You state your name and address.
Adam Patti, 1597 Herbert Avenue.
Okay. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You have 3 minutes.
So it's been my pleasure to get to know Luja. I've worked on the house, the one that she currently owns, and I've learned a lot of the history behind it, and it's actually a very unique home. It was used to film The Informant with Matt Damon and Danny DeVito, I believe, because of its historical significance and how it was one of the original homes in the neighborhood. And I also heard that the driveway went all the way to Central Avenue. And the home was designed to have that lot next door with it. And I think that was one of the main reasons that they chose that house, because it was such an architectural triumph, or just how it fits in the neighborhood. And I also noticed how cool the house was throughout the summer. With this, it's one of the biggest trees I've ever seen in Central Gardens. And I think that tree in particular should stay. I don't know if that in the plans would be removed or not, but it's in the back left. The trunk's about the size of a small Volkswagen. So I could imagine that it would be quite a job to remove it, but I hope to see that stay. I hope it works out for everybody. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, the applicant, did you want to come up and have any rebuttal, or are you okay?
All right, so it's a vacant and buildable lot. We're well within our rights to build on it. And we've cooperated and communicated fully with Central Gardens HOA, as well as Landmarks, in terms of any and all suggestions and requirements. We intend to build a house that's both aesthetically pleasing and fitting to the neighborhood. And in regard to the trees, we don't want to cut down trees generally. Not only do we like to preserve them, but it's also expensive and time consuming. We only cut them down when it's necessary. And that's about all I got.
And what is the square footage of the house?
A little over 3,500.
Okay.
3427. 3427. Cool.
Questions? Any questions?
I have a question for staff. What is the maximum allowed square footage for this area? No pressure.
Well, there's not a maximum allowed square footage. Excuse me. It's just got, guided by setbacks and the lot size, so, yeah, there's no, a maximum square footage for a residence.
I'm curious. There's a house on the next block. I'm curious because I'm pretty familiar with this street as well. And there's a house on the next block that I think is probably comparable in style and size. So I was trying to pull it up. I can't get it exactly on the map, but
The lot size.
yeah, it looks to be about the same. So I was just curious if there was some sort of parameter there.
There's not, and, you know, there is a lot of variety, even historically, in Midtown on size and height, and, you know, even on the same street face.
Right.
There's a pretty big variety of those things, so.
But I think there's just the roof line has to be in line with the other homes. Is that correct?
There's no requirement for that, and I think, you know, with the landmarks, there's a lot of flexibility that we bring to you guys, and that you guys, you know, even within where there may be something that the guidelines say, the commission can make adjustments. You can discuss, debate, and, you know, come to any conclusion you want. But, you know, looking through Midtown and the historic areas, you know, there is a big variety, even historically, even on the same street block of, you know, there's usually some contextual consistency, but as far as height, size, and, you know, roof shapes, and that's part of what gives it some, you know, some of the character. So.
Sure. Thank you.
Has this lot always existed as a separate lot, or was it subdivided?
No, we were looking at that just now, and it looks like it was always a separate lot. Just may not have been built on.
Well, I think somebody said that, did they not?
So that it was divided.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just curious because, I mean, it's always been an existing lot. There was always an intent to one day be an infill, perhaps, for building according to local codes at the time, UDC. He's actually adhered to several of those codes, and even not to the maximum amount if they're talking about you having a 5-foot setback, and he could have gone 3.5, and, you know, it's growth.
And it's worth noting that he came to us first.
Yes, and modified a lot.
Need to all staff comments.
Yeah. Okay, did
Then
y'all?
we can move forward. You want a motion?
Yeah.
Motion to approve COA 2023-206-1657 York Avenue, Central Gardens Historic District.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Discussion?
I think it's I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, I appreciate the neighborhood's concern, particularly those that live right next to it. Change is never, ever easy, but it's also at the same token, how many times we have somebody who literally adheres to what is needed and then goes additionally to make sure that it matches in some sense to the neighborhood as a whole. You know, I mean, he's pulling elements that we are familiar with this neighborhood. It's a level of uncomfortableness just because now there's something being placed in an area that didn't have it before, but that was always going to be that unless one of them had gone and purchased that lot for themselves to make sure it preserves it for that intent. So if that's a missed opportunity that was picked up by a new builder, then, you know, there's not much that you can say about how he does to his own land when he is adhering to all of the code requirements plus actual aesthetic requirements for this property and this neighborhood. So, I mean, I approve of and I accept staff's recommendations.
Yeah, that was actually really well said. I agree, and commend the applicant for a really strong application. Thank you.
Okay.